Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Summit Unitarian Universalists Fellowship's Sunday morning Zoom worship service. San Diego numbers still have us in the red, so transmission rates are too high for us to meet in person. So your intrepid crew of sanctuary personnel are here this morning to give you this service. So without any further ado, let us calm our minds, focus our minds, and listen to our prelude from Barbara. Good morning, Barbara.
This is on. Hi, I will be playing two pieces by Dennis Agee. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, from 6 pieces on Jewish folk themes with the idea of holy envy in mind. And I will first be playing the roundelay, which is very upbeat, and then the calmer meditation.
And welcome again to the Sunday morning virtual worship service of Summit UU Fellowship. Summit is a liberal religious community bound together by shared principles that are drawn from world religions, humanist teachings, nature and science, philosophy, and our own personal practices. We are a religion of love and inclusion, and the mission of Summit is to commit ourselves to building a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world. Of course, if you're new here this morning and you're new to Unitarian Universalism or to Summit, and would like to know more about us, we invite you to go to our website, summituuf.org, click on the visitors button, and someone will get in touch with you. As we do every Sunday morning, we want to acknowledge that our fellowship physically resides on unceded Kumeyaay land, and that for more than 10,000 years, this land has been and still continues to be home to the Kumeyaay people. We recognize the violent history of colonization in California and honor the legacy of the continuing presence of the Kumeyaay people here. This morning, we're delighted to welcome someone new to our virtual pulpit. We'd like to welcome Robin Mitchell. Robin Mitchell comes to us from the UU Fellowship of San Dieguito up in, Solana Beach. She's been a member there for over 30 years. She's also a member of her local Methodist church. Is also a Buddhist Sangha, having taken formal vows as a Buddhist practitioner, and she's also traveled into India to study Buddhist teachings, and we welcome her this morning. And we're glad that you've joined us as well this morning for a time of connection and reflection. We invite you to stay after the service for a more casual time of question and answer and check in on everybody, see how everyone's doing. So we hope you join us for that after the service. And now to begin our service, we'll light our chalice. Barbara's going to light our chalice for me. Thank you. In the mystery of life, about us there is light. It gives us a place to be, to grow, to rejoice together. It opens the pathways to love. In this place of friendship, there is freedom. Let the light we kindle go before us, strong in hope, wide in goodwill, inviting the day to come. Now let us join together while muted while we sing our UU hymn, both in English and in Spanish.
De todos bajo el gran sol, sur esperanza, fe, amor, verdad y belleza cantando de cada tierra, cada voz.
From all who dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
And now please join me while still muted with our UU aspiration. May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. Mary Carter-Vale is, I believe, back at camp this morning, so she's not here in the sanctuary, but she was nice enough to send us a video, so we would like to share that with you now. Good morning, Mary.
Hello, Summit. It's Mary. I am not physically at Summit today. I'm up at Camp de Benedict Pines, getting ready for the beginning of our senior high camp, senior high UU camp for our UU youth. And very excited because we haven't had summer camp. This will be 2 years with no summer camp. So this is our 3rd year and we're finally making camp happen. Yay. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I wanted to have a story for you this Sunday. So this Sunday, my story is called Holy Wonder. And I wanted to lift up one of the sources that Unitarian Universalism recognizes that we affirm and promote and draw from. And this is our direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. It's a beautiful thing. Wonder. When was the last time you really engaged in wonder, huh? You know, I love wonder, and it's one of the most wonderful things about my job is I get to work with children, and children are always making new discoveries, and it's really beautiful to see the impact of that. Like this week, we harvested some beautiful tomatoes from our garden, and there was wonder in the gorgeous golden yellow tomatoes that we were harvesting. Or do you remember the wonder the first time you saw a butterfly, or maybe blew the little poofs off of a dandelion and watched those seeds float away? There's so much to wonder about, isn't there? Well, this week, this incredible image behind me caused a lot of us to wonder and to delve into that holy wonder and deep curiosity. This image is from the Jacob Webb telescope, that it is their first deep field image that they shared with us. You know, with the rest of us, scientists are probably going crazy studying all this stuff. It's absolutely incredible. And this shows this main galaxy. I think it's this one in the middle, this bright, not the starry one, but that bright ball right in the middle. I believe that's the main galaxy that they were looking at, which is 4.6 billion with a B light years away from us. That means it took 4.6 billion years for that bit of light to get to us where we could get that picture with the telescope. That's amazing. I mean, that's a long, so long ago, I can't even imagine it. And some of the light, like the really far little ones that are far, far away, the astrophysicists are saying they could be as far back as 13 billion years that light has taken to get to us, like during the formation of the universe. I mean, we could be looking at light from the very beginning of the universe's formation. Isn't that amazing? That is just amazing. This is like looking at a time machine, because all this light took that long to get to us. So it's what it was like way back when, not what it's like now. That's kind of mind-boggling, huh? So Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's an amazing astrophysicist, has been teaching about this. And I encourage you to go look online for some of his YouTube videos if you want to learn more about this. But see how there's these arcing, curving, like this little red one right here is kind of, I want to put my finger in front of me so you can see it. There's a curve, the light is curving. That is curving because there's a gravitational pull on that light. So it's pulling that light and curving that light. That might not be exactly what that object looks like if you were up close and in person, which would be kind of impossible, huh? But our scientists are digging into this and looking at these, and they're going to be studying this huge picture for a very, very long time. Now, if you were looking up at the night sky, do you know how much of the night sky this huge picture would cover? I want you to picture what 1 grain of sand would look like in your fingers. 1 grain, tiny, tiny grain of sand. I want you to hold your arms all the way as far as you can up against the sky and look at that 1 grain of sand. That is how much of the sky this image is a picture of. It's a very tiny, tiny speck of what is out there. So much curiosity, so much wonder as to what more are we going to find? What more are we going to discover as we're looking at this ancient light that is coming to us through this device? So being in wonder, being in curiosity is something for all ages, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're a child or an adult or whatever, we can all wonder about things, right? So I encourage you to lean into your holy curiosity, your holy wonder, and be curious and find out more about anything that you're interested in, like all these amazing, beautiful objects of light that are come to us from billions and billions of years ago that we're learning about. So be curious and who knows where it's going to lead you. This for me is a spiritual practice, and I hope that is one that you can engage in as well. So I'm going to be at the camp being curious with a bunch of our high school youth, and I'm excited for that. But I also live in this practice. So being in wonder is a daily practice. That is my story for you today, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mary. Have fun at camp. Be safe. We'll see you soon. This morning's reading was selected by Robin. It is called I Have Learned So Much by the ancient Persian poet Hafiz. I have learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Jew. The truth has shared so much of itself with me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman, an angel, or even pure soul. Love has befriended Hafiz so completely, and it has turned to ash and freed me of every concept and image my mind has ever known. And now to further bring us into the spirit of worship, I'd like to introduce Robin Mitchell for a meditation this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. As we center ourselves this morning, I invite you to take a few minutes to consider the gifts you give this fellowship and the gifts it gives you, the gifts you give your communities and the gifts they give you, the gifts you give to life and the gifts it has given you. Hold them in your heart with these words also from Hafiz. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like this. It lights the whole sky. And now be in an attitude of reflection, meditation, or prayer.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, condemned, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no worshipper, lover is living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, whoever you are, condemned, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no worshipper, lover is living. Come yet again, come.
Summit is a fellowship that is supported entirely by the voluntary generosity of its members and its friends. And we greatly appreciate our faithful pledgers who maintain their pledges every month. We've made it as easy as we possibly can for you to donate to our virtual plate. We put the link to the we put the link to the donation button in the chat, or you can visit the Summit UUF website and press the donate button. And now listen to Barbara again. Thank you, Barbara.
Hello. This is music of Carlos Chavez, who was born in Mexico City. This is something he wrote when he was young and was writing in the Solana tradition, popular in Mexico City at the time. This is the Benediction.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And we welcome again, Robin Mitchell.
Good morning. A lot has changed in our country since I first gave this sermon at my home fellowship 3 years ago. Back then, I could open the sermon by saying how much I loved being a member of my Methodist church, how much I appreciated them as a healthy and positive spiritual community, with only the usual raising of eyebrows. That probably hits a little differently today, with last month's loss of Roe v. Wade being almost certainly just the first in a parade of horrors brought on by the Christian right. And yet it's still true. Like many Christian churches that aren't in the headlines, mine still remembers Jesus's commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves and how radically wide he casts that net of neighborliness. In about a month, I'll be leading a sermon at my UU fellowship, where our guest speaker will be one of the ministers from my Methodist church, talking about her role in leading our outreach program for LGBTQ and other marginalized people, and sharing their stories of pain, persistence, and healing. And for years, she's been leading a study group in the church that I think has been trying to institutionalize that spirit of openness, of looking beyond the comfort of dogma. We've read books by Black theologians comparing Jesus's death at the hands of imperial Rome to the lynching of Black people at the hands of white supremacist America. Books contrasting the Jesus of history to the Christ of myth, and books urging the church to show as much concern for the sinned against as it shows for sinners. One of my favorite books from that group is one we read a few years ago called Holy Envy, Finding God in the Faith of Others by Berber Brown Taylor. She's a Christian author who started her religious career as an Episcopal priest, but eventually discerned that her path wasn't in pastoral ministry. So she left that and for a time found herself teaching Religion 101, World Religions, at a small liberal arts college in Georgia, which is where the book came from. Preparing for the class, she read Krister Stendahl, who is the dean of the Harvard Divinity School, had 3 rules for approaching other religions. 1, when trying to understand another religion, you should ask the adherents of that religion, not its enemies. 2, don't compare your best to their worst. And 3, leave room for holy envy. The first 2 seem pretty straightforward, if maybe a little hard to follow these days. But she says no one knew exactly what he meant by the 3rd. It was only as the class progressed that she began to discover it for herself. An important part of the class was field trips. Like your own RE youth, at least in the days before COVID, they visited nearby houses of worship to see firsthand how people of other faiths experienced the divine. One of their first visits was to a Hindu temple in Atlanta, where they watched the devotees bathe and clothe a statue of the goddess Padmavati. That was all fine, watching the heathens do their exotic thing. But then the priest offered to give them a special blessing. Taking them to Vishnu's shrine, he offered them prasad, food and drink that had been offered to the god and that were now being given out as a blessing. She shared the shock of confusion as they suddenly changed from spectators to participants in what looked to them a lot like idol worship. She watched as most of the students drew back, one of them actually hiding behind another as the priest approached with the blessed almonds. She herself didn't know what to do, but when she saw the confusion in the priest's face, why would anyone refuse the gift of Vishnu's almonds? She was moved to take them with gratitude. And driving home, she found herself stewing about the contrast she had seen. She wondered, why was my crowd so defensive in the face of their graciousness? Who had convinced us that faith was a competitive sport and that only one team could win for all eternity? She was discovering the meaning of holy envy, of looking at another faith and seeing something more noble than yours. That feeling grew the day they visited a synagogue and found that they had come on Simchat Torah, the day they celebrate the beginning of the yearly cycle of Torah readings by singing and dancing as they parade the Torah scroll around the room. The rabbi asked her class to join in, so they all formed a holy conga line, and afterwards said, "You Gentiles sure can dance." The Hindus had freely offered them blessings, and now the Jews had equally freely asked them to help bless their own ceremony. Or the time they visited the Islamic Center, and one of her students asked if they could buy a copy of the Quran to study. Their host went to a bookcase, took a box of them, set it on a chair and said, "Since there is no compulsion in religion for Muslims, I won't hand you a copy, but you're free to take one if you like." And then at the end of the visit, the imam told them, "Our deepest desire is not that you become Muslim, but that you become the best Christian, the best Jew, the best person you can be. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful." Struck by their rejection of religious imperialism, she yet again found herself driving home full of holy envy. All of this affected her deeply. Like many people, like many of us, I suspect, she wasn't really used to looking critically at her own religion, and seeing it so often come up lacking shook her faith, both in Christianity as a whole and certainly in the way she had been practicing it. She had to figure out for herself what it meant to be a Christian if it was only one faith among many and not the sole source of truth and light for the world, and if there was even anything meaningful left in it in that case. In the end, she decided there was, for two reasons. She says, in the first place, no one can speak all the religious languages in the world, and there is no spiritual Esperanto. None of us can speak language. We have to speak a language before we can learn anyone else's, and the carefulness with which we speak our own can make us better listeners to others. In the second place, my religious language is quite excellent at speaking of what it means to be authentically human. In Christian terms, it means being made in the image of God, not just you, but everyone. It means tending the neighbor's welfare as religiously as you tend your own. It means crossing all kinds of boundaries to meet people where they are. So besides the obvious ways this book warmed my ecumenical heart, it impressed me for two reasons. The first is that my church, this mainline Protestant church, had told everyone to read it, that it was important that they read a book about why Christianity isn't the best and only true religion in the world. And it's not like this is a new thing for them. I remember our previous minister once saying, if we really believe that God is sovereign, that means we don't get to tell him how he's allowed to appear to other people. And our current minister always stresses at communion that this isn't his table or the Methodist's table, but God's table, open to everyone, regardless of who or what or who they are or what, if any, church they belong to. I specifically asked him if that meant people who weren't Christian, and he said yes. Anyone who respects our communion enough to want to take part is welcome. So if you're ever up in North County on a Sunday, I invite you to come take communion with us. We can't offer you Vishnu's almonds, that's a different franchise, but we can give you Christ's bread and wine to nourish and bless you on your own path. And the other reason I love the book is that it has given me a way to understand my own feelings. Practicing 3 religions gives me a lot of chances for holy envy. And it's really helpful to have a name for something I've been feeling for years. Envy gets a bad rap as a negative emotion, but at its core, it's your heart telling you that it isn't getting something it needs. And each of my traditions seem to leave my heart needing something that it can only get from the others, which I think is why I've kept following them all for so many years. For example, when I'm sitting anywhere other than here with my UU family, I envy us our spiritual openness, how we can draw wisdom and inspiration from all faith traditions, not just our own. I absolutely loved the Hafiz themed service we did several months ago at my fellowship, where we read his poems and shared his ecstatic love for God. Those poems would resonate so well with the Methodists, whose Bible shares that same passionate love. Here is God talking to Job. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations, while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? The Sufi poets are the morning stars singing together, the angels shouting for joy. But I'll never hear them there because they aren't Christian and they aren't in the Bible. And so I'm left with this massive case of holy envy. Or at the other extreme, a sparkling humanist sermon our board president gave a few weeks ago. I am neither an atheist nor a humanist, but his sermon made me wonder how much of the inspiration and beauty I find in my religious calling would really be lost if I were. I so treasure that kind of challenge to my ingrained ways of thinking, but again, not a sermon I'll ever hear from a Methodist pulpit. On the other hand, when I'm sitting here, I have other kinds of holy envy. I envy the Methodists, their cultural and political diversity. I remember walking through their parking lot on Communion Sunday during the 2012 election season and seeing 2 cars parked next to each other, one with a Romney-Ryan bumper sticker and the other with an Obama 2012 sticker. I was so struck to see these 2 very different people who literally wore their partisanship on their metaphorical sleeves, coming to take communion together, drawn to our church by something greater than political partisanship. But mostly I envy both them and the Buddhists, the fruits of their religious unity. As much as I love our diversity, there's a power and depth in religious practice that for me only seems to come when everyone shares the same story, the same myth. People like Joseph Campbell and Karen Armstrong talk about how the great religious myths speak to our deepest questions and longings and present them in a way that invites us to take action in our lives to move closer to the answers. And when I'm in a room full of people who are unself-consciously praying to God or to the Bodhisattva Chenrezig, I feel that invitation more strongly than I do here. Both of those faiths are tapping into stories that are compelling and beautiful and on some deep level true. And my heart wants that so much. But then when I'm sitting in my Methodist pew looking over at the Buddhists, I feel so much envy of the open source space for their religion. The Christian Apostles' Creed is full of these arbitrary claims. I believe that Jesus was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, that after he died, he rose from the dead and ascended into heaven, where he is seated at the right hand of the Father and will come again to judge the living and the dead. There's no way to investigate any of that. You either take it on faith or work to see it as a myth that reveals some deeper truth. But the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, life as we're living it involves deep suffering. The cause of that suffering is clinging to illusory things. The way to end the suffering is to cut the clinging at the root, and that there's a path you can actually take that leads to that. Those are things you can go out and investigate. You can look deeply at your life and ask whether these things make sense in light of your own experience. I so envy the Buddhists for having created such a beautiful and compelling religion from such a plain, approachable foundation. And when I'm sitting on my cushion with the Buddhists and looking at either us or the Methodists, I'm filled with envy of our communities. I love the Buddhist groups at my fellowship, and we are a loving community for each other. But we're just too small to do all the things that my fellowship and my Methodist church do. Having potluck dinners and sacred circles, sending aid to Ukraine and feeding homeless people here, doing social justice work and having art fairs and concerts, and all the other things that a larger community can do to nurture its members and engage the world. And the social justice thing seems to run deeper than just the size of the community. When I'm with them, I envy the way both we and the Methodists see it as a vital part of our spiritual path. For us, looking at our own biases and privilege, the way we have in the old welcoming congregation and the current beloved conversations workshops, is a very real spiritual practice, one that's directly tied to making the world a better place. And for the Methodists, serving God by serving our fellow human beings, loving our neighbors as we love ourselves, is an essential response to God's love and abundant love and grace given to us. Many of the individual Buddhists I know are giving deeply of themselves and doing wonderful things in the world. And the Rinpoches I've studied with are tirelessly organizing things like schools and healthcare in Nepal and India. But it doesn't seem to be front and center in their practice and teachings the way it is for us. So those are the things that keep me going to 2 services every Sunday and a meditation group on Friday besides. But I suspect I'm not the only person here with some form of holy envy. When I hear people at my fellowship talking about their childhood religions, or what they see in their friends or the children's friends' religions, sometimes there's a sense of wistfulness along with their relief at being here. Wistfulness may be for shared ritual, for a sense of the divine, for something that once fed them and now isn't as much. Or sometimes in my fellowship for our humanist past, when we felt freer to ask questions and challenge authority than we do now. Whatever it is, this is something to pay attention to. As I said before, envy and wistfulness are a signal from your heart that it isn't getting something it needs. And now is a good time to pay attention to it. One of the things I envy about us when I'm anywhere else is our flexibility. Our congregational polity allows our fellowships to be whatever we need them to be. And now is an especially fertile time for you, this pregnant pause between settled ministers and this time of flux as we all find new ways of doing worship and community in the face of COVID, when you have even more of a chance to shape your fellowship in the ways your hearts need. So listen to your hearts, where they are full and joyous, and where they are perhaps emptier and distanced from what they love. And use this time to shape this fellowship into a place of holy fulfillment. Amen, namaste, and may that be so.
By extinguishing our chalice, I want to invite you to stay afterward for a time of community gathering. Also want to invite you back for next week. Next week, Reverend Ned White will be in our, well, not in our pulpit, but he'll be speaking to us. So please join us for that. And now as we extinguish the chalice, these closing words. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. And now let's join in our closing circle song.
Together, hand in hand, in fellowship we stand. Before we go, we'll share the flow of standing hand in hand. Together, hand in hand, in fellowship we